Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that brings you the best guests in all of true crime. And today we have two very special guests. We have Gigi from Pretty Lies and Alibis, and we have Lauren from Hidden True Crime. I know most of you guys probably already know these two amazing women, but if you don't, they are both creators. They each have their own channel here on YouTube, and then they also have an audio podcast. So I just want to say hello and welcome to Gigi and to Lauren.
Hey.
Hello. Thanks
Girls
for having
lunch.
us. Yeah, good to be back.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that we are three different channels. So this is a collaboration between Surviving the Survivor, Hidden True Crime, and Pretty Lies and Alibis. So after the show, regardless of which channel you're watching on, if you can please go to all of our channels and subscribe, hit the like button. And if you want to, you can join our memberships. It just supports the shows and it tells us that you guys like these types of shows and the content that we're all putting out. We all put out very similar cases, but very different and unique perspectives. So just because you like one of us doesn't mean you can't like all of us. So please definitely support the show. And I know some people are going to get annoyed, but wait. I just want to remind everyone, Joel's book is out. It's only been out for a couple of weeks. So if you do not have this book yet, you definitely should. Some of you may be rolling your eyes, but here's the thing. When your spouse or your best friend or your loved one or anyone that you care about does something really cool, like write a book, you show up and you support them. So I just want to thank everyone who has shown up and who has supported Joel. And if you have not, the book is available on Amazon and you can also buy it on survivingthesurvivor.com. Just click on Joel's book. All right, enough about that. Now let's get into it. As many of you guys know, we've been getting together every couple of weeks to go over the Chad Daybell trial. And after everything happened with the sentencing, obviously there was chaos, a lot broke out. We were all, I think, caught off guard with the timing and how sudden it was. And so I just figured, even though it's been a little over 2 weeks, it's still worth doing a show to debrief and talk and get our reaction and really have some time to reflect, not just the three of us, but everyone in chat as well. So welcome to everyone. Welcome to STS Nation. Welcome to the Alibiers. Welcome to the Gems. And again, Lauren and Gigi, I'm excited to hear from both of you guys. And let's get started by getting our reaction about the sentencing. I want to start with Gigi, and then obviously we'll go to Lauren. But Gigi, where were you when you heard that sentencing was going to be taking place on that Saturday?
So I had the live stream going. My mods who rock were monitoring that. I was driving to CrimeCon. So it's like 5 hours, maybe a little less from my house to Nashville. So I was like, I'm just going to drive it. I had all the stuff in my car and my phone blows up, y'all. So my phone just absolutely goes crazy about verdict. We have a verdict. So I pull over and I'm 35 miles from the hotel where CrimeCon is. So I whip it over in a parking lot, y'all. I thought I was going to end up on Forensic Files. There were people there that were just, I'm not trying to be judged. They were sketchy. And they kept coming like near my passenger window, like, and just staring at me. So I'm kind of just like off camera shooing them away. But I'm like, y'all, I'm gonna be on Dateline. But it was, so yeah, I was just in my car watching when that verdict came down. And then once it was announced, went to the hotel. But yeah, very, very tense 30-minute wait for many reasons, not only verdict, but just life and limb.
Well, and that's the craziest part about this is it happened to be that weekend was CrimeCon. So lots of true crime fans, lots of creators, we were all either just arriving to Nashville or had already been there. I know many gems were coming up to me saying, hey, where's Lauren? Have you seen her? And I was like, no, Lauren is not coming because there is major breaking news in the trial and she's been there the whole time. How can she leave now? So Lauren, tell us about where you were when you made that decision to stay and obviously what was going on there locally.
Yeah. And thanks. Right. I had a ticket to CrimeCon. We were going to all do a meet and greet together and that didn't happen. Of all the things we thought or predicted during the Chad Daybell trial, maybe it would still be going on. We didn't expect a sentencing on Saturday. So you're absolutely right. I canceled my flight. I gave my ticket away. I just couldn't. I couldn't leave after being there for 2 months. And, I just had to see it through. So being there, it was really, really heavy. I couldn't imagine being anywhere else. You had the day before. Well, first off, earlier that week we were waiting for the verdict, right? And the verdict came down, and that was such relief. And everyone thought, okay, we're good. I even had some family say, you know what? I think I'm okay. The verdict is all that matters. Like, I don't know if I care as much about the sentencing. I think I just needed the verdict. But as the day went on, and no sentencing came back Friday, the tension was back. People changed their minds. And that family member I spoke to realized, you know what? No, I need to know what the sentencing is. As the jury was sequestered, they were staying overnight in hotels. It was heavy, and the courtrooms closed to the public. What courtroom? Many courthouses around the nation are closed on Saturdays, but they opened it, and we were all just sitting there. We couldn't leave the 4th floor where the courtroom was, and we were just sitting there. My roommate brought everyone treats and snacks, and we huddled in a circle. I was with Tammy Daybell's whole family. They had to change their flights as well. They were flying back to their home after the verdict, after they gave their victim impact statements. But after the sentencing took a while, many of them changed their flights. And we just sat and waited, and it was so heavy. And Friday night first, we were there really, really late Friday night after hours. And then finally, when the guards came and said, look, you guys got to leave, the jury's done, they're donezo, we're like, what? So we all go, we all leave, and then we're all able to come back Saturday into the courthouse. It was just the heaviest waiting ever. And it was emotional, and I guess heavy is it wasn't even exciting. It was just heavy. It was emotional. It was when we all got in there for the sentencing, I think we just felt relief that finally we were going to see this through. Whatever it wasn't even that we wanted a certain sentencing, it was that we wanted a conclusion, I think.
Well, and it was interesting because Joel and I had gotten to CrimeCon to Nashville on Thursday. And so we had been there, we had sort of checked out, and shout out to Space Coast because he was running everything for us. And I was like physically, I don't know if any of you guys saw our live when we were breaking down, but I was like literally wrench, screwdriver, like building this whole setup that we had. So we were completely checked out on Friday. And I had told Joel, I was like, you know what, like, we'll just check in later. Like we'll keep checking headlines. Joel always has news alerts. And then I got tons of texts from Space Coast. And then on Saturday, I didn't check my phone because at CrimeCon we were so busy. And all of a sudden I had like so many missed calls from Space Coast. And he was like, it's happening now at the sentencing. And I remember Gigi was just a few booths down from us. And I ran over there and I was like, Gigi, she's like, I know. She's like, I'm pulling it up on the computer. She's like, we have it on the computer. So people were huddled around there. I was like physically running around CrimeCon to try to get guests because we also wanted to take it live and do an analysis with different best guests. And like the entire room, you could just tell everyone was just, there was so much suspense and everyone was nervous and anxious and almost not excited, but just, waiting for this moment to finally happen, because I feel like so many of us have been watching this. I mean, you guys have obviously been covering not just this trial, but Lori's trial as well from the very beginning. So for you guys, I feel like this has consumed so much of your life, but it was interesting to be there. And I know so many of you in the chat were also there with us, like wildfire. But it was interesting to be there with so many people who are emotionally involved, because I feel like outside of the true crime community, people, they read the headlines, they know what's going on here and there, but not like true crime, like the true crime community that is very emotionally involved. So it was interesting. I feel like everyone just stopped. The room was silent for, I feel like, the entire sentencing. And then at the very end, once we heard what was going on, the room immediately erupted. And I don't know if it was applause, cheering, and a sigh of relief all at the same time. It was actually very interesting. And I don't even know how I feel about all of the feelings that were shared there. I think people were just excited for justice. And, you know, a lot of people there were wearing pins and shirts that had some kind of you know, message about the Daybell case. But it was an interesting place to be. And Gigi, I don't know, you know, how you felt about it, but there was some cheering. There was definitely a lot of emotions. I know some people were tearing up. And again, like every creator, and I feel like every booth just stopped to see what was going on and to really take in the reality of what everyone was witnessing together. Oh, sorry, Gigi, you're muted.
Thanks for sharing that. Wow.
I'm just testing y'all's lip reading skills. Come on now. No, so I had the feed going, but we couldn't hear it because I didn't have an external speaker. So I have photos and videos. My mom was taking videos, and we all just had our phones to our ear. And then as they read it, it wasn't clear to us with all the noise. We hear it met the criteria for death, but it's, you know, it didn't register really until about the fifth time he said it, looked like this is death, like he's getting death. And it was just very surreal because there were times where I felt like these trials were never going to happen. I mean, way back in the day, Lori was incompetent for months and months, didn't know when she was going to come out of that and face trial. You know, we had so many delays. So it was just really a mix of emotions of resolution and justice. And I don't want to say that it's not a happy thing because you've got 4 people, 3 of those, were the subject of this trial in Idaho, but it's very bittersweet and weird emotion. It's like, okay, you're happy that justice has been served, but it's just a reminder of why we have this verdict and the sentence, which are these kids, Tammy and ultimately Charles, which Lori's in Arizona. So my booth, we didn't really have a lot of cheering, to be honest. It was just more like a yes. All right. Okay. And Lauren, I don't know about you, but after he got handed down death, I think had it not been taken off the table for Lori, I think she would have got the same.
I think so too. I absolutely do. In many ways, the jury's hands are a bit tied, right? I mean, if it's there, they have to just go down a list and did it meet this? And did it meet this criteria? And did it meet this criteria? It's mostly a listing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how much, I mean, the jury pretty much just has to look at that. They have to follow the guidelines. So yes, I think you're right that if Lori had a penalty on the table, she would have gone there.
Yeah. And what about being there, Lauren? We were all watching on our computers on Zoom. Like we were watching, but obviously we're still so very disconnected since, as you remember, Zoom doesn't have the best camera angles. And so we were able to obviously see what happened, but it's different being there. It's different having those feelings and being able to look around and see the jurors and see the family members and see Chad close up. Describe what that 3-minute period was when you were hearing what was going on and trying to just absorb and take it all in.
Yeah, I see what Black Witter is saying. Anyone else emotionally exhausted after it? Absolutely. So it was so intense. It was so intense. It was so heavy. Let's go back to the verdict too, because before the sentencing was the verdict, right? That was a moment too. So you have all of these powerful victim impact statements and all of these different families. If you realize this is a case that has affected so many different families around, these few states, and nobody knew each other before. If you think about it, minus the random Tammy Daybell's cousin, Julie, who happened to live in Arizona and went to church with Tylee and JJ. Beyond that, no one knew each other. Colby didn't know Tammy's family. Tammy didn't know Colby. They didn't know Tylee and JJ. And so you have all these families that have had such tragedy. These 3 were murdered. And then, of course, Charles's family, Kay and Larry, didn't know Tammy and didn't know these people. And after it was so heavy. You give these victim impact statements. We hear these victims pour their hearts out. It was the first time really any of us had heard from Tammy's family because they had been so private. Then we're waiting. It's this heaviness of everyone just wants to know that he's guilty. And after that happens, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful moments, and I'm honored to have been invited, but all of these victims got together, these people that didn't know each other before this tragedy. And after the guilty verdict, they went to lunch. And they all gathered at lunch. You had Colby and his wife. You had the entire Tammy Daybell family. And then you had the Woodcocks. And then you had Tammy's cousins and others. And then me. I was so grateful to be there. And to see that these families, they could have really resented each other, right? And they all embraced one another and said, we're here for each other. I don't know if I've ever seen that. And I don't think anyone would blame them if they did decide to go their own ways and stay private and not embrace one another, right? I think even especially for Colby, whose mother was, you know, he felt this of that moment will stay in my mind forever, to be able to be there and witness these families embracing one another after they were murdered by these, you know, that's a moment. And as far as what it was like, the 2 months was an absolute blur. I think I was surviving. I was determined to be there, and I'm really close to Tammy's Aunt Vicky as well as the Woodcocks, and just we all supported one another. But I will say that I think I'm still breaking down exactly what it was the past 2 months. Yesterday, I just started crying, and I haven't done that yet, oddly. I mean, I cried during victim impact statements, but as far as like the entire trial, what it was, and I just started getting emotional. Like, that was really heavy. And so to hear that even at CrimeCon, I loved hearing your stories that like everyone was gathering around. It's been so heavy for so many people for so long. It's been 5 years or almost 5 years. Gosh, yeah, it was an intense 2 months. I'll just say that. It was a long, intense 2 months.
Well, and I remember I texted you, Lauren. I was like, hey, are you okay? I was like, just, you know, reminder to take care of yourself. And same with everyone in chat. I know, and I would watch both of your shows, both Gigi and Lauren, and I would hop into your chats. And I mean, all of us and everyone here that's watching now, like we were all watching, and they were really heavy days at trial. I know that you guys covered Lori's trial. I did not watch Lori's trial. And so to watch this trial, especially, you know, as moms, as the three of us are, it's hard to really like grasp and understand and take that all in. And I know that you spoke to Tom Evans while you were there, Lauren, and we actually had him with us on our show when the sentencing was coming out. And he said it over and over again. And he said it in previous shows with Joel, that those images, those details don't leave you. And so I think that was hard absorbing and watching that. And again, it must be so much more intense in person. And I know, Gigi, you were there as well for a week. But to really like take all of that in and remind ourselves that we're talking about 2 real children and a woman, and all of these things really happen to these people, and that their families are still trying to, obviously they're relieved now, but this is something that they have to deal with and live with every single day, like forever and ever and ever. So yeah, that's really heavy.
And last year, you know, I was at the entire trial last year. This year, just the 1 week. But last year, we were able to see the autopsy photos there in court because it wasn't streamed live. They got the audio, I think, at the end of the day. So last year, the public was able to see the horrific conditions these kids were found in, what was done to them. And, you know, I echo Tom, is something that I think about often, just because this case is what I started the podcast on. So I've gotten to know like Lauren, Kay and Larry, Aunt Vicky, just wonderful people. And so you feel this sense of, even though you never got to meet these victims, you have a love for them that really is hard to explain and may sound weird to people who don't follow true crime. But over the years, you feel like you kind of know people you'll never meet. And so there is that personal connection with every bit of the trial. And so I think last year for me personally, when we had the autopsy photo days, it is one of the most profound moments in the years I've been doing this that will stick with me forever. And this year with it being streamed, they didn't show anything to the public. I think one time they slipped in, maybe showed one little thing, but it wasn't super graphic. But that's something that until the day I die, I'll see with my eyes wide open. It was so horrific. But just kind of building on what Lauren said is last year you saw the same thing. You saw these different family members coming together, and instead of your family member did this, everybody just it's like this unit, and they're a part of this club that God forbid any of us ever have to be a part of. But they are in a very unique situation in that they're all dealing with the same heaviness in their own way related to their own loved one. But at the end of the day, the horrific nature of the case bonds them in a way that I'm really glad they went the direction of strength in numbers. You see Tammy Daybell's Aunt Vicky and Larry, and you would think they had known each other for 20 years. There's no awkwardness. It's just love. It's pure love. And then we had Dawson Murray, the sweetheart, who is Joseph Murray's brother, show up. Just the biggest sweetheart you would ever meet. Totally his profile picture right now is with Kay and Larry. I mean, it's like he let everybody know, I'm on your side. Like, this is horrible. I'm here to support you guys. And so you have moments like that where it's like, man, in the ugliness, some really beautiful things can happen.
And I want to say, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, Lauren.
I was just going to say, as far as what Gigi just said, one moment I'll never forget. And I think, again, Gigi and I sat by each other the majority of Lori Vallow's trial every day, and we saw those autopsy photos. They showed the gallery last year because it wasn't televised. And I think the moment, Gigi, that is seared forever in my brain, and I think it kind of shows, you and I were on Banfield together that evening, and we talked to Ashley Banfield about what we heard, and the video is still up on my YouTube. It's actually has a warning before it, and because it's so graphic, but you could see the heaviness in you and the heaviness in me and the shock in Ashley, and that's, I think, sort of like this moment that I'll never forget, what we learned that day. Yeah, we'll never leave it. So I just want to thank you for being a friend during that time too, when we were learning about that.
Yeah. And I mean, you and I were, and we were riding in the car together some, and we had time to talk about things and kind of unload on each other and just, kind of hash out what we had seen. And I'll never forget, I was 30 seconds from going live on Cuomo that same night, and I got sick. And I used to work in a morgue. And so seeing graphic death does not bother me in a way that would make me physically ill. But I think, again, it's that connection to knowing and loving Kay and Larry, and now knowing and loving Aunt Vicky. I've claimed her as my aunt, whether she likes it or not. But you have that personal connection. And then as children, that's a whole other heavy layer of them two, I poor Shanley Painter, she was on air, and I found a little cove where I could just go get sick. Thank God there were no security cameras, but it all kind of hit, it was just so heavy. And yeah, Lauren and I were seatmates last year, and I missed being there. I'm glad I got to go. That was the last week of testimony. And the first day I was there was when Emma and Garth testified. So it was really the perfect week to come. And, I booked my flight out earlier, and just so happened, as soon as I clicked my seatbelt, I think the last witness was done, and then it was moving on to closings. So, I'm really glad I got out that week, because it was very full circle, at least if only for a few days, to sit in on his trial as well, with just how big this case has been in my life.
And I do want to get to Emma, but first I want to answer Annie K's question here. She's asking, what is to be learned from this case, in your opinion? Obviously, this case had a lot of emotions, a lot of evidence. It's been, it was almost the part two, because we already saw Lori. Now we had Chad Daybell. So what do you think your takeaway is for this case and for this whole trial? And we can start with you, Lauren.
So much, but you're asking for one thing. I'll just share one thing, an overall message: dehumanization. And that dehumanization leads to crime and tragedy and pain. When, of course, their dehumanization was dubbing people zombies or dark. And look what it led to. But I think overall, in every crime where someone is hurt, I think there's dehumanization. And when we can't see one another as human beings, full human beings with thoughts and feelings and love and pain and kindness and bad moments and good moments, that is what leads, I think, to the majority of all crime. And it was absolutely the theme in this crime that should be learned, that you cannot dehumanize people, and it's so tragic.
Yeah.
And speaking of dehumanization, I just want to put this image up here. I know that all of us watching are probably very familiar with this case and with the victims here, but every now and then I like to put the images up just so that we do humanize this story and we do remember that this is about these three beautiful faces that we're looking at. These are people who will never get their life back. These are kids who won't go to middle school, won't, live on to get married, won't live on to have a career, won't live on to do any of the things that so many of us are doing. And same with Tammy. She lived a longer life than JJ and Tylee, but she didn't live the full life that she was intended to live. All three of these people, their lives were taken, and the people that love them and the people that, were expecting to have them in their lives no longer have that. So again, if you take a minute here, really look into the eyes of JJ, Tylee, and Tammy, and really remember that these are three real people. And I mean, it could have been anyone in their circle, and it happened to be these three people. And it really is heartbreaking.
Yeah. And I think, the thing too, you talk about, JJ and Tylee just didn't get a chance to grow up and become adults. But, even Tammy, she's got grandkids that have been born since her passing that, and I've seen a few pictures of Tammy with her grandkids, and she looks like every proud grandmother in those pictures. So much denied. And, for what? Was there anything, Lauren? What shocked me is that Lori and Chad didn't talk after his arrest. So you're looking at 4 years nearly, or 4 years now, that they haven't talked. That was interesting to me. I don't know what the restrictions were as far as could they, once those cases were severed and they weren't co-defendants, but they also could be doing it through family or attorneys. But that was surprising to me. And I've heard they can't talk now, but then I've also found a form on the Idaho Department of Corrections websites that if inmates want to talk to other inmates, there is a release that both prisons can sign to facilitate that. I'm trying to figure out in their case, is that going to happen? But I think it speaks volumes that 4 years later, from everything that we've heard, Lori's still very much on board with the belief system and very much dedicated to Chad. And that's 4 years of not talking to the guy.
Yeah, I know. I think bottom line is the fact that there was going to be evidence of their recorded conversations. I think John Pryor probably put a squash on Chad ever talking to Lori, knowing that it was going to be recorded. That's my thought, at least. Yeah. I know, it's wild. It's wild though. They're not even in contact, but remaining married. So
yeah. I mean, a year. They got together. October 2018 was when they first met. She was arrested February of 2020. So I suck at math. I'm doing the finger counting. You've got 16 months that these two communicated, and they've been in jail 4 years. They've been in jail way longer than they were together. You have to wonder, in the depths of Chad Daybell's mind, when he's laying there in his little death row bunk, does he think, I wish I'd never went down that path. I could be home with my wife, with my grandkids, my kids. You have to wonder. I don't think Lori goes there, just from everything I've heard, but you have to wonder with Chad, does he ever sit there and say, what a moron? Or does he believe in what he still was putting out in the world or to this group.
My thought is, I think that he has regrets, but they're not his regrets. I think he blames it all on Lori. I think
Right.
that John Pryor's defense was Chad's real defense, and that John can't diagnose people, but I'm going to say this narcissist absolutely, I think, can't see anything wrong with what he's done, and it's always the woman's fault.
Right.
Tammy is dead because she wasn't hot enough, and Lori's at fault because she was too hot, and people just took advantage of him, which is insane.
Yeah. And he really focused in on, what I call flat out body shaming with Tammy, and then making her the siren, the sexy siren, if you want to call her that. I mean, I would dispute that, but it really was kind of those typical patriarchal views of women. That was the theme of John Pryor's overall defense, which is, she had big, I'm going to go get me a quarter pounder with cheese today, just out of spite, and just be like, this one's for Tammy. But yeah, it really
That's
bothered
what I
me.
did.
Yeah.
I saw you. I think you posted about that on Instagram. Yeah, I saw that, Lauren. But that was the craziest part about that part of his defense, was that he focused so much on her health and her being unhealthy because she has a quarter pounder, or because, the clogging is difficult, which, I mean, even if you're fit, any kind of activity is difficult. Like, that's why you're doing it. I play tennis every morning. I play tennis for 2 hours. And at the end, if you saw me, I'm panting. I can barely breathe, but it's because I just played tennis for 2 hours. Like, it doesn't make sense that way. It's
I get winded after laundry.
It's how I get my aggression out. So I can be peaceful throughout Joel's shows. But but no, like I personally like throughout all of that talk, I was like, it's so hateful, and it's just so silly and so dumb and so disrespectful to every person, that was the best defense, that was, the way that he would bring her down, is to talk about her weight or her fitness or looks. It was just so silly. I
horrible.
to be very, very disrespectful.
Tammy was a beautiful woman. You put the two next to me, I'm going to say Tammy was the prettier woman by far. I hate that comparison, and really what I think happened in the very beginning is that Lori probably, I mean, look, 4 husbands, he was number 5. She's been around the block. She's been around the world several times. And so I think she just did things to that man that blew his mind and made him lose his mind. And then not only that, it seems like for decades, Chad was trying to find some people to buy into what he was selling, and bam, not only did he find the people, he found a woman that was pursuing him, and he was pursuing her. And then it was just gasoline fire. Boom.
Well, and question for you, Lauren, going back to sort of buying into this and, remorse or whatnot. Was there any moment, I feel like we didn't see it on camera, but was there any moment, even if it was for half a second during the trial, that you caught Chad having any kind of expression of, I don't know, just something that would make you stop and pause and say, okay, he's showing a different emotion?
Not once. And you know what? I actually felt Lori did more than Chad. We were all disgusted last year when Lori was upset seeing her children's autopsy photos and didn't want to see him and wanted to be excused from the courtroom because we were like, how dare she, making the jury and us see him, and she won't. Like, how dare she? That, to me now, is so much better than how Chad acted, which is 100% indifference. The one day he cried, and I didn't see tears. There could have been tears. I'm not going to judge whether he was or wasn't. But the one time he cried was hearing his voice on the 911 for Tam, when he was calling to say Tammy had died. So first off, who's he crying for? Him making the call, or Tammy? And that was the question I had. And then we answered the question later that day, or about 10 minutes after it. So the call ends. There's a sidebar. And what does Chad start doing while John Pryor's over on the sidebar talking to everyone? He's scrolling pictures of Tammy dead on his computer. Everyone on the left side could see nothing. Nothing. So if you wanted to know who those tears were for, 5 minutes later, that was answered. It was for Chad. he showed zero, maybe I did something wrong. And he really did just, he blamed it on the women. And I just want to point this out too, because it drives me crazy. Women cannot win. Lori was at fault because she was hot and a vixen. And so he slut shamed her and, you know, blamed it all on her. And Tammy was dead and murdered because she was not healthy enough and not petite enough. And it just points out, like, in Chad's brain, this is everybody's fault but him. And it just also shows it's always the woman's fault when it comes to Chad Daybell.
And what about this question here? It sort of segues, you know, because it seems like Chad really just stuck by his story, and you know, that's just who he is right now. But what about Raque Acevedo's question? And I believe, I could be wrong, I don't even know how I know this. I think she's in Mexico City. I could be totally wrong though. If not, I apologize. But shout out to Raque Acevedo. But she's asking, do you think these trials will resonate with all the ones who are still buying the delusional crap that they are selling? Will they stop? So, you know, we may assume how Chad feels, but what about people who were following him, who believed in him? Do we think this has changed how they feel? Or do we think this is just a mistake in their eyes?
I think they think that he went down the wrong path, that he was taken by Satan. And I'm referring to people with Chad Daybell's belief system minus the killing of zombies. Okay. So there is a group out there that believes in a lot of the things Chad Daybell believes in, but they say, well, but we would never kill children. But here's my concern. And it goes back to the dehumanization. If these people that share his belief system believe that people can be inhabited by evil spirits, that's dehumanization. And when you start to believe that people can be inhabited by evil spirits, there is always, always, always a threat. Because once you dehumanize someone, you can do the unfathomable to them. And so will they stop buying into this delusional crap? Gosh, I hope so. But the other day, I saw a video of a man who loves and reads the book Visions of Glory, a book that Chad and Lori loved. And he was talking about his little girl being possessed by an evil spirit. And he did an exorcism on her. And now she's okay. And that's why she was having seizures. And if that continues, same with Jody Hildebrand and Ruby Frankie.
Yep.
If you believe that people can be inhabited by evil spirits, and then you think that children can be, there is always a risk. There's always a threat, and that needs to stop, whatever denomination there is. I will preach that till the end. I know we have Bible stories of Jesus Christ casting out evil spirits from people, but in my opinion, this idea's got to stop, because it's dehumanization, and there's always a threat if that happens.
Well, you look at Blaise Thibodeau. I mean, that was a close call where, if you remember, I think it was from Arizona, where the mom and the uncle and the sister took him into Alaska because they thought he was going to usher in that second coming. I mean, you see that those radical ideas are still out there, but at the same time too, I honestly wonder, what did Chad Daybell tell John Pryor as far as his side of the story? There were times where Pryor would say things that were so completely out there to me that I thought, how much of this is coming from Chad? And he's just reiterating that to the jury, where, you know what I'm saying? Like with Melanie Gibb, why was there this fixation with Melanie Gibb? Did Chad tell Pryor something that got Pryor hot on Melanie Gibb's trails? We'll never know, I'm sure, but still, there's just things that I wonder.
I think so. I think John Pryor knows a lot, and I think he was told something by Chad about Melanie Gibb. I think
so too.
I think so. And I think there's a lot more about Melanie Gibb we don't know, and John Pryor probably knows it. I think the most interesting thing about John Pryor's closing arguments to me, because to me they were bizarro world, but I thought to myself, this is what Chad believes. This is the entire Chad argument. This is probably what his children believe. And it's wild. But yes, I think John Pryor knows a lot, and those are hints to what he might know.
Right.
And what about his children? So I thought those were obviously very fascinating days for testimony.
Gigi, you were there.
That was the first day. The first witness after I got into Boise was Emma Daybell. And I was, you know, I was going to the memorial. There were some weather, some tornadoes near where I was connecting. My flight got canceled, didn't get to make it. And this was definitely the second best week to be there, because with a lot of the witnesses we saw early on, with the exception of a few, we saw those last year. I could almost go back and compare my notes with the investigators, the medical examiners. It was pretty much the same testimony, but we never had heard from his kids. And so being there and seeing that in person, to me, was very different than watching it on what it would have been watching it on TV, to see the body language, to see the way Chad, for me, even watching on the stream, his body language was so different with different witnesses. With Heather Daybell, I'm going to tell you, he's intimidated by her. Like, his body language was like slumped over. He wouldn't look at her. With Emma, direct contact. They exchanged, glances. With Garth, he barely looked at him. When his mom was on the stand, it was the good boy posture. That for me was really interesting to watch, just how he reacted to certain people on the stand. And then when Lieutenant Hermosillo was on the stand, Chad kind of kept his head down a little bit, but then you'd see him out of the corner of his eye, like, please don't let him be looking at me, but I'm going to look at him. It was just interesting to see the people. I thought Chad was not nervous, but just uncomfortable with them being on the stand. Heather Daybell being a big one, because living in a patriarchal household, or being raised in one and then having one of your own, I'm sure you don't like strong women who will tell it like it is. And Heather Daybell had been blowing the whistle since what, Lauren, like the 90s on Chad?
Yeah.
I mean,
I didn't realize that long. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, Heather was a teenager when she came in. Chad was on his mission when Heather started dating the brother. Isn't that right? I mean, so
she grew up with the Daybell family. She was 14 when she started dating his brother.
Yeah. So she's seen this evolution. And at first, I think Jason, Chad's brother-in-law, Tammy's brother-in-law, said it started off as a story, and then it became this, and it became that. And then, I was thinking about Lori's allocution statement, to where her story progressed to, I died on the table when I was having Tylee and my body floated away. It's like, we never heard any of that in text messages or past recordings we had of them. It's almost like they followed suit of this experience became this, and then it became this whole, I can see into heaven. It's just weird. It's almost like they fed off each other. Like they had an idea. Oh, he went past the veil. And nobody said she died or, coded when she was giving birth to Tylee. It's like she pulled that out of her rear end.
Well, and what about, so you said in person he seemed very much intimidated by Heather, but what about Emma? What was that? What was his body language like? Or did you notice anything different when Emma was there? Because that was obviously interesting testimony. And I think her body language in general was interesting. So I'm interested to hear how he reacted to her. And then obviously both of your thoughts on everything Emma said and how she said it.
He was very much, he looked at her the whole time, and she would look at him. It's definitely an enmeshed relationship. Clearly, we learned that they talk every day while he's in prison. I'm going to say that's weird. That's way weird to me. They talk every day. She has a family that she's taking care of, and kids, and a job, and she's talking to her dad in prison every day. And
she's living in the house.
And she's living in the house.
That part disturbs me the most, actually, out of everything.
It's very disturbing, where she knows that JJ and Tylee were found. She knows that. And she's living in the house, which is also weird. Like a side note, she criticized in dash cam footage from years ago. She criticizes Colby, saying, we're not Colby, Dad. You raised us to be independent. And I'm like, no, you're like living in your dad's house, talking to him every day, enmeshed with him. Colby's like said, peace out, Mom, testified against her, has a family, has moved on. I'm like, but sorry, that I digress. But they were very connected. It was clear that this was Chad's moment. And what's cruel, let me just point out again how cruel Chad Daybell is and how he uses people. He used his own children. He did not testify. He put his children on a national platform to make fools of themselves, for people to gasp, to be shocked as they defend him. Not just defend him, but blame and victim shame their own mother. Forgive me, I thought I was on Do Not Disturb. Victim blame their own mother. And he did that. Like that, he uses people. He was not afraid to put his children on the stand for a national trial to embarrass themselves. But he proudly did it, and he was proud of them. And he clearly has some coercive control over them, in my opinion. And I'm not taking the blame away from Emma either. She's a full-grown woman and makes her own choices and is living in this house and is married and could stop talking to her father. But just like Colby stopped talking to his mother. But it was a really, really wild day in court. And I've heard that for some of, the people that were in court every day and maybe really involved in this case, it was one of the hardest days for them, listening to not just Emma stand up for her dad and spout whatever her dad wanted, but to shame her mother the way she did.
Yeah.
Well, the narrative was very clear. And I do find, I obviously don't know the case as much as you guys do. I just watched this trial. And I will say, I had some feelings about it all going in, but watching that and not having the depth that both of you guys have, and not having as much influence from the previous trial, I will say it was disturbing because of that. Because, Lou says it here, Emma's a daddy's girl. It was bizarre, rehearsed, and coerced. It felt very rehearsed. It felt very uncomfortable. It felt very forced. And yet it was like there was negativity, and there was just like a very bad feeling and emotion that I felt was being exerted and also absorbed just by watching it. Like it was very uncomfortable to watch. And I don't know. In a weird way, like I really felt sorry for Emma because, she's a victim of her circumstance,
Yes.
of her father, and of everything she has been told or forced to believe, and her experiences, which I can't even imagine what happens behind closed doors. But it was very uncomfortable to watch. And, the fact that she is a teacher and the fact that she is a mother, like all of that together and absorbing it and watching it, it was very uncomfortable. And that's that I don't have, the wherewithal that you guys have been able to have with understanding Lori's trial, all of the characters, and now this. I think a lot of people in the chats were talking about how they were very disturbed by everything that they were hearing and again seeing. Like she was very defensive too.
Yeah, and when they did that, go ahead, Lauren.
No, I was gonna say I think she said it well. Discomfort, and you're right. She's a victim. But go ahead, Gigi.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think one thing to you, Lauren, that Aunt Vicky said is all these people were asking her, what do you think Tammy would think? And she said Tammy loved her children. At the end of the day, Tammy loved all of her children. And, it's a hypothetical that you don't want to go to because, you're never going to get an answer. But for me personally, I had a lot more sympathy towards Garth. I've heard from a lot of people he is more soft-hearted, just got caught up in this somehow. But man, I felt sorry for Garth. I did not feel sorry for Emma. She was very bold and strong in her answers. When they did that interview a couple of years ago, she seemed to be the mouthpiece of all the kids, reiterating my dad was framed. He had nothing to do with it, which is just a ridiculous theory in itself. We had John Pryor essentially accusing law enforcement of using his shovels to do the excavations of these remains. And that's how the DNA got on there. It's just so not plausible. But I had sympathy for Garth because everybody I've ever talked to that knew Garth, and I've had people who have reached out where their kids were taught by Garth and said, he's a really nice guy. Like he is a really sweet young man. We feel bad for him. And it seems like the community he has embraced him. But at the same time, though, it's just Emma. I remember one juror said to, I believe, Nate Eaton that they seemed robotic and it just wasn't credible. So
I think that goes back to just how shameful or shameless Chad Daybell is. Again, I think that we all know now and suspect that the children lied on the stand to protect their father, and he let them do that. He told them to do that. He does not even care about his children. In other words, if his children were to turn on him, he would so quickly, I think, throw them under the bus too. I'm
Oh,
just
yeah.
saying, like, yeah, it's just he uses people and tosses them when they're no longer useful. And he used his kids in this trial, and that's despicable.
But when you had that witness come up that worked with Garth that said, I found
McKay.
her, dad was nowhere around, that was one of the most powerful moments for me, maybe in the whole trial, because it discredits Garth. And we know now that Garth was the subject of a grand jury for perjury that didn't produce any charges. But man, you want to talk about bringing in a witness that just totally cleaned up everything that just happened on the stand and tossed it out with the garbage. That witness right there who had no dog in the fight saying, yeah, he found his mom, Chad was nowhere around. My theory, Chad was probably driving Alex back to the church or doing something of that nature.
Yeah.
Lee has a question here. Did Garth look at his dad or have any expressions toward Chad during testimony?
Gigi, do you remember? I don't remember.
I saw, there were a couple of very quick glances in Chad's direction, but he would, as quickly as he looked, divert his eyes. Chad really didn't look at Garth. It just screamed to me that, is this a thing where Garth feels like if he doesn't do this, he's going to lose 5 siblings? He's lost his mom. He's lost his dad. He knows what's probably right. But at the end of the day, if you get up there and you throw your dad under the bus and say, look, I came home, she was dead, no clue where my dad was. It's not what he's selling. You have to wonder, how does that play into here? Because you look at the enormity of this case, you can't imagine being thrown into this by a family member on a worldwide stage, a case that's so huge with missing kids and dead spouses, and it goes on and on and on for months till the kids are even found. Is it self-preservation to hold on to what little family you have? It's not excusable. Maybe that's a Dr. John question, since he's so amazing at going through that stuff. But that's things that's run through my mind. Is it just that duty as a son and as a brother that you try to save the one parent you have that's on earth, even if you know it's not right?
Yeah, or his family, or just doing what he thinks. He said by all accounts he's a mama's boy. That's what people have said, and that's what he said on the stand. I think when it comes down to it, I think he believes I think he probably believes his mother wasn't murdered. And so whatever it takes to save his family.
Yeah.
It's still not okay to lie under oath. So I'm not going to let him get a pass. But clearly, I think what we can see from it is they have been victims their whole life of their father and coercive control. And I'm not taking the blame away from them. They're adults. But it just shows this, I think, the abuse that was in their family for years, including Tammy.
And if you look as far back as we know, when Chad was talking about this kind of stuff, that's the decade in which his kids were born. So they were born probably being taught these principles that shocked all of us once it became public, but were very normal to them. So if the kids really believed in light and dark, and they find out their mom's a dark spirit, well, that might make her passing okay to them. And I don't want to say okay, like no big deal. But if they believe truly in the light dark system, which we saw text messages from one of the kids saying, dark is fascinating or something like that, then maybe the death was not seen as much of a tragedy as it would be if there's that religious weird explanation of dark, but now she's doing her mission and she's thriving and she's doing good over there. Is it?
And mom would want you to do this, and mom would want you to testify this way. I know, using Tammy.
Right. So there's so many dynamics at play that we may never know. But my feeling is that from day one, these kids were raised in some way as it progressed in this thought process. And that contributed to the stand of what we saw.
I'm going to say what I think. I'm going to say it boldly. I think Chad Daybell was always an abuser. Did he escalate his belief system? Sure, probably. But I think he was always an ass, sorry. And I think he abused Tammy probably from day one. She probably didn't recognize it. They had kids early, and he controlled that family. And no wonder she was depressed. And I think it was manipulative, and I think people couldn't see it. Many people can't see these things. so
Right.
clearly. You know it's wrong when someone hits you, but you can't always see it when it's manipulative and it's emotional. And I think that clearly this family has been trained for um, decades. And similar to how Tylee protected her mother. Tylee protected
Mhm.
her mother until the very end, and look what happened to Tylee. So it's awful. It's absolutely awful that parents do this to children and create a family culture of coercive control. And
Yeah,
I
and
blame Chad for that.
yeah, and I tell you, I just did a episode with my best friend Fruit Loop and Brienne. They run The Hiding Place. She was my old co-host, and they have a domestic violence safe haven, and they have a hotline you can call. And they were talking in an episode about people who say, "But I'm not sure if it was abuse," and it becomes emotional abuse as their story is told. And they're like, "You are absolutely a victim of domestic violence. It's just not that physical." And one survivor told them at group, the physical was hard, but it healed. But when they get in here and they change the way you think and they change everything about how you see the world, you don't know who you are anymore as an individual. You are a product of what you live in. And so I think that can be said for Tammy and the kids, especially after that move to Rexburg, where you don't have people who know her, seeing her on a daily basis or having in depth conversations on a daily basis. It's easy to isolate people, and then the abuse really kicks into high gear because your control system, your group that keeps you grounded aren't a daily part of your life anymore. We can fake it over the phone. We'd be like, yeah, things are great. Things are horrible in the background, but I mean, I think there was severe emotional and mental abuse, and it is horrific in its own right because it'll have you questioning everything you were ever raised to believe.
Yeah.
Well, and that's, I think, going back to the testimony, I think that was the takeaway, is that it didn't make sense. It didn't seem normal, but their life was not normal. Their
Mhm.
how they were raised was not normal. What they are raised to expect doesn't make sense to us. And so I
Mhm.
think that was really clear, especially with Emma's testimony. And again, like, her attitude and how she carried herself through all of that. Speaking of which, Mizi Mom here has a question. What's happening with Emma's job? Are parents pulling them from her class? I don't know if you guys know anything. I had read online, I didn't confirm anything, but I had read online that after her testimony, people were obviously very upset and concerned about her job and her interaction with other children. Do we have any kind of update?
I've heard the same. I'm like you. I have not confirmed it. I didn't call and find out what was going on, but I wouldn't be surprised. And I will say this: I am not. I am very anti-cancel culture. I don't want everyone to start calling and saying get her out of this job. But I will say, if I was a parent in that school district, after hearing her testimony, I don't blame the parents for calling and being concerned. I would have concerns. So I don't blame anyone. And this is again where I am upset at Chad Daybell for allowing his daughter to give this testimony. Because yeah, it probably will hurt her career. Uh, and I guess my hope is if it does, and or if she can't be teaching, or if she loses a job, hopefully maybe this will be a fresh start. In many ways, she needs to get out of that house. She needs to stop talking to her dad. She needs to maybe branch out. If these children are ever going to heal, maybe a fresh start could be really good.
Mhm.
But did people start calling? Probably. They probably did. And again, I'm not for cancel culture. I don't think that anyone should go group try to cancel anyone. But I don't blame parents for being concerned. I certainly would be. So I just think it's a natural. I think it's a natural consequence of Chad Daybell allowing his children to get up there and do what they did, and hopefully maybe these children. I still have hope that maybe these children can see something different. I hope they've lost so much, and now possibly careers because of these testimonies. So, I hope that they can maybe get a fresh start and get out of that house, stop talking to Chad, and
And
make,
reconnect with the Douglas family, because clearly there's so
yes,
much love waiting for them there, and, it's just like that would be the most ideal thing, is for everybody just to sort of stop doing what they're doing, get a fresh start, and reconnect with Tammy's family, because every single sibling of Tammy's that got up there extended that olive branch. We love you. And I think that these kids probably don't understand, with the way they've been trained, they would be welcomed back with open arms and probably tons of love and not a lot of questions, because that
totally.
the family members of Tammy that I have grown to know and love, they would just be like, "I'm so glad you're back. Let us love you." And man, I really hope that happens for everybody. I think so much healing could take place within that family if that would happen.
I completely agree. They all extended an olive branch and love for them in their victim impact statements and spoke to them. And you're right, they do have a lot of love. They have not lost family if they could open their arms to the Douglas family. I hope that these children, they're adults. I hope they start. The first way to healing is seeing this for what it is. I don't know if they can, but I hope they do for their own
Yep.
sake and their own health.
And a lot of family obviously spoke out during the impact statements. But what about with you, Lauren? You were obviously there. You were, with everyone. You were interviewing a lot of people on camera, but then also speaking to pretty much everyone off camera as well. I mean, you really sort of became part of the family, just being there and really taking on all of the emotional exhaustion with them. What was your takeaway from, like, was there any single person that left you with any kind of message or anything that you want to share? I mean, you obviously interviewed, I feel like, pretty much everyone involved. And so who really impacted you the most, and what was that message?
Wow, great question. Great question. And you're right. There were a lot of off-camera conversations. Most of them were off camera, even, and private. Just heartbreak, the absolute devastation and heartbreak. Um, there was a lot of anger towards Chad, but when it came to Tammy's children, I'd say it's just more devastation and heartbreak and sadness. Yeah, just heart crushing. I think that was what everybody felt. Um, so many lives have been absolutely torn apart by this case. I shared this in one of my lunch lives that once the verdict came down, my phone started blowing up with people that I've talked to privately and publicly that have been affected by this case. It goes so far, just saying relief, 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 like finally. Um, so many people have been affected by this case, and it's hard to even explain the ripple effect, even beyond family. And I've even been talking to a lot of those people, like some people that people don't know about. And just the devastation and the tragedy that will affect hundreds of people and generations to come. Um, I think I can share one thing that Aunt Vicky shared with me, although I'm not going to be able to say it as eloquently, but it's what she felt like. It's like, as someone, the loss of Tammy, it's like if someone comes into your house and um, robs your family of your most prized possession, and realizing that it's such a violation on the deepest level, and that it'll affect generations, and almost this stain, this tragedy, this stain on a family forever. Not just the temporary loss of Tammy, but also what it will do for her grandchildren and for her children and for the generations to come. Vicky would so eloquently express to me as an aunt, while she's not Phyllis, she's not her mother, her aunt, who grew up very close to Tammy. Tammy would work for her as a high schooler in her flower shop. She said it's just the most violating thing you could do to a family. Like, just, it'll forever. she would joke, there would be jokes among the Woodcocks and we used dark humor to get by, and there would be jokes with the Woodcocks and Vicky about how now every Dateline show is so boring, that they used to watch Dateline, and now it's just, that's all you got. They joke that like their story is like, everything's a snooze fest now, because the tragedy that affected them is so extreme and so intense, and like I said, the ripple effect, so they'd have that humor and they would laugh about it, and then the next moment though they'd be crying. And I think that was a takeaway. Is I think I want to share this from Vicky too, and that she loved her sister Phyllis so much too. She loved her sister Phyllis. They were very close, they were sisters, and she sat every day in court to be a witness for Tammy, to say, I'm standing by my niece, and for my sister too, who can't be here because she died of cancer right after Lori was convicted. And I think because of that violation in the family, she was like, I just need to make sure somebody is there every single day. And it was trying, it was hard, and she made a big commitment. And Tammy's family thanked her for doing that, because it was hard for them too, and so many people they just couldn't fathom sitting in front of him every day. But I just going back to the absolute travesty, the violation, and how it will affect generations to come, the loss of their beloved Tammy and JJ and Tylee, and what is that, and Colby too, just the travesty. I think that's what I learned over and over again. And the strength too, though, I want to say the strength and the love these families have. I can't get over that. Like I said, they could all have resentment towards one another. Victims don't have to get along with other victims. That's like, there's no rule that says that. But these families have chosen love and compassion and forgiveness and gathering and connection. And it is so touching for me to see that.
Mhm. I remember Larry making a comment one time too, extending an olive branch to Chad's kids, that they could come to them, and it's, that's something I've always respected, and we just touched on it, which is just, you have all these people that have been affected in very different ways, but in very similar ways, that just found that common ground of grief and love and loss and support. There were times where I would see Vicky check in on Larry. I mean, it's just, they became each other's keeper during this trial in just the week I was there. And I know last year it was a lot of the same. You saw it. You saw these different families just, hey, you good? You good? You need anything? But man, they're burdened until the rest of their days. I mean, they may be years removed from this, and boom, there's going to be a documentary they pass by on TV or a news article. This is stuff these families will never fully escape, not just by the Daybell last name, if that happens to be your name or whatever. It's going to be with them forever. And man, they've handled it with such grace. And I don't know how you get the strength to do that. I guess justice is your resolve, and you want to see those held accountable. But good for Vicky for sitting in there and making Chad see her in that courtroom every day. Like Tammy was not forgotten in this. I mean, we got Kay and Larry there. They were there for both trials. Illness with Tammy's mom, but Vicky was like, nope, I'm right here. And I'm going to make sure you see me every day in here for Tammy. And I love that about her. I know there were days it wasn't easy.
Yeah, I had a thought. I needed to talk it out. So this is what I think the ultimate message. This is what I've been most, I think, kind of shocked by and impressed by this trial. And I'll tell a story to reiterate it. But love. These victims, like I said, they could choose so much. And I think I am shocked and surprised and touched and humbled to see how much love and forgiveness and kindness has come out of this. As we were waiting for the sentencing, I sat in a circle with Tammy Daybell's family, her brothers and sisters and her dad, and we told jokes and told stories. And I said, thank you for allowing me to sit here. I didn't have anywhere else to sit. Thank you for inviting me into your circle. And Jason Williams said to me, that's what my mother would always say, I am a collector of people. I collect people. Of course you're welcome to sit with us. And there was a story last year that Brian Enton would share, and maybe Brian Enton's a great example because he's sat through a lot more murder trials than I have. I've sat through 2 now. Full, Brian Enton does it, all the time.
Every day. Yeah.
Every day. So he's seen it all, and he said there was something different. And we were all waiting for the verdict of Lori Vallow's trial. He would often sit with Gigi and me, and we were waiting and waiting, and there was a prosecution room that they had given to the victims. And in one moment, I was getting ushered in. Hey, come here, come in. And I walked in, and they're like, it was the Woodcocks, and it was Rex Connor, who was Silver Linings host and the uncle of Lori Vallow, and me. And I think they invited, Justin. Well, I think I was walked in. They're like, do you want a sandwich? Sit down. And I was like, and I'm media, right? So throw in media to these people. They're like, welcome. Here's a Jimmy John sandwich. Eat up. And then they're like, go get Justin, go get Brian, go get Gigi. Like, invite everyone in. Who needs a sandwich? Who's waiting here? And Brian said, this is exactly how he shared it on our channel. He said, I don't typically eat when someone offers me food and I'm on the job. I typically say no, and you've been a reporter, right? That's kind of what, people offer you stuff, right?
You're always like, no, thanks.
You're like, I'm good. I'm on the job. And Brian goes, you know what though? I realized it's been a really long day and I was hungry. So he's like, yeah, I'll take a sandwich. And he sat there and he couldn't believe the hearts of just all these people affected by absolute tragedy. And so I think that overall there was a lot of behind the scenes, there was a lot of dark humor. There was a lot of laughs. There was a lot of love. There was a lot of camaraderie. But overall, I would say I'm just so surprised at the love. And that's what Brian said. He said it wasn't unusual. He said it's typically, you don't always see this at every trial. And so I think the takeaway from this is, despite the sick crimes, that love and kindness and collecting of people has come from this tragedy is really touching to see.
And in their worst moments of reliving through testimony and being in court and all that, to think we need to feed these people. And it's not just the physical food. It's that you see the kind of family that Tammy came from, which is this loving, hey, been a long day for you. Come join us. Same with Rex. I mean, he's a sweetheart. I met Rex last year at trial. I've talked to him a little bit after. But you see, and then you just think, man, it's just so sad that I really just think that Chad isolated her from that love that was her rock. I'm just thinking out loud here. I have no direction I'm going, but I'm just saying that you see the love in that family and you see what she was moved away from. And then you can see how easy it is to sort of just keep pounding all the stuff on. And we don't know what Tammy knew. We don't know what Tammy suspected. We know that Melanie Gibbs said she suspected something between Chad and Lori, but just so many things will never be answered. And I guess we'll always wonder, did Chad get to those emails first? We don't know.
Yeah. As far as Millie Miles, I have not had a chance to speak to Annie. She gave a beautiful victim impact statement for her niece. She was able to meet her once as a teenager, and was really touching to hear how that affected her in that speech, especially because no other, family was there to rep, on Lori's side, and she gave an incredible victim impact statement. I've invited Annie on our channel. She's declined. She doesn't want to really speak on other channels, and she does her own thing. And she came and left right after, so she did not mingle, and she has declined coming on Hidden True Crime.
One more quick question here, and then I know Gigi has to race out with her daughter, and I have for full disclosure, if you're hearing a lot of background noise, I have my 3 kiddos plus the 2 dogs here, and Joel is also live, so hope my kids are okay. But Karen Lee, I know, I'm like, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
I told my 10-year-old, if there's an issue, yell louder.
Right.
But Karen Lee here has a question. Can you guys weigh in on Chad Daybell's mugshot? He appeared unemotional during the trial, and then that weird grin.
Yes, I'll tell you what I think.
Lauren has
first off, yeah, and people mentioned in chat, I want to clarify, yes, Colby Ryan was there to give his sister the most beautiful victim impact statement. I didn't mean to dismiss that. I just meant other answer uncles. Colby was there to represent Tylee. So yeah, I didn't want to dismiss him. Dude, I saw it and I didn't know what to think. When I first saw it, I started giggling. I was just like, all I could say is like, this is not what I expected. And there was a part of me that my first thought was like, this is just like Lori's like wide-eyed mugshot. I was like, I put them side by side because I was like, is this him showing his crazy? Like he looked crazy to me.
And we had not seen that look ever, like never a hint of I mean, there were times where he would grin like where somebody stumbled over words, like the most odd things, socially he's an outcast, but yeah, no, I'm with you, Lauren.
What did you think when you saw it?
I think, okay, so I have a very different take on it. To me, my first thought when I looked into his eyes and see this weird grin is fear in his eyes. Not in his mouth, but maybe they connect. Maybe it's that I'm getting checked into death row and I'm never getting out. For me personally, I saw fear. Just sort of this awkward, holy crap, like this is happening. It's, maybe, they get mental health evaluations as soon as they get to prison. Did they give him some feel-good medication to maybe make getting escorted into his forever home cell in solitary a little easier? Maybe, but I see fear. And so whether I'm right or wrong, I'm going to say fear because that makes me feel better.
I like that. I mean, it could have also been, like a little nervousness. I know
the smile was just not genuine. They don't connect. So like when people smile and it's genuine and they're happy, or even if they're crazy, like this and this connects. This was like the eyes are like, holy crap. And the mouth is like, don't know what to do in this picture. Do I smile? Do I stand here? Do I look like a serial killer? Do I, you know what I'm saying? It's almost like, I don't know. It just spoke to me. I'm not getting visions from Chad. I'm just saying, me and my brain, I'm like, what is he? Is he scared? Is he happy? Is he crazy? The other thing too, his hair was brushed back. People were like, that does not look like Chad. And I saw some conspiracy theories and I'm like, he had a stubble and his hair was back and he looked scared. So, but it was bizarre. I literally like was in a store shopping and I just stopped and pulled it back up. I was like, let me look at this again. Like, this is so weird. So I don't know. I like to think he's scared.
And then lastly, because we did bring up the similarity between their weird photos, I think Abby was asking earlier, shout out to Abby in Nashville. Let me see if I can pull it up. I think Abby and a couple of other people were asking if and I think we discussed this last time, and I don't know, I think we didn't know or there hadn't been any contact, but do we know if Lori and Chad can write letters to each other now? And do we know if there is, I think someone was asking about some kind of marital law. Let me see if I can pull this up here.
No conjugal visits. I can tell you that.
No, not that.
Unless they can hit the portal.
But here, also Dr. Vonda K was asking if we know if marital privilege exists in Idaho. And if it does, maybe that's why they aren't divorced yet. Do we know if there's any kind of plan for them to be divorced? And at this point, does it matter? I don't know.
I think when you're on death row, like death penalty, I think a lot of things aren't okay. I don't even think they can write now because they're both felons. Lori's serving 3 consecutive life sentences. Chad Daybell has a death penalty. I think that things are going to be a lot stricter. And I don't even know if they're going to be able to write letters to each other. Are they, Gigi? Or I don't know.
Nate Eaton said his understanding is no. I did find that form online from Idaho DOC where if 2 inmates want to correspond, both facilities have to clear it. So it could be, hey, he's on death row. But my understanding is that Chad can get a tablet on death row. So is that just for approved family members? As long as people are putting money on his books, he can do video calls and all that is my understanding. But it seems to be, I trust Nate Eaton when he says no. But then I did find that sheet, but it could be different with death row and you know, that kind of thing. But there is that form online. I posted it on one of my episodes. I can repost it today and you can look at it. But who knows? But man, you have to, I think Lori's still all in. Lori is still 100% from what I've heard, all in on the religious aspect, or I don't even want to say religious, this wackadoodle belief system they had. And she's very much committed to Chad. Can't say the same for Chad at this point. And I don't know that that registers with her. You have to wonder, what does she think?
I think it's partly denial too. If she has to admit she was wrong, like
and may have to face what happened. And can you imagine somebody divorcing Lori Vallow, because she's been the divorcer, you know, pretty much. I don't think that anybody divorced her. She divorced, you know, 3 and then had the 4th killed. And then Chad, you know, we're still there. But can you imagine if Lori got served divorce papers? I'd pay to see that.
Yeah. Well, and I can tell you this too. She does not believe Chad Daybell threw her under the bus. I'll tell you that.
That's what I've heard. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and that's what I'm wondering. Like, I wonder if divorce is even a thought for them. I mean, between the similar smirks and them both thinking this was all a huge mistake, like maybe they're waiting for each other. Like
Chad's indigent, so I'm not sure that divorce lawyers like are appointed for publicly. So he's gonna have to. He's got to save his pennies. No, it would be interesting, but really at this point, what's the point? You know, I mean, like nothing's going to happen with their lives outside of those bars forever. And I think if anybody divorces, obviously it's going to be Chad, and it's going to be you got me here. He's going to blame her. It's all on you. So I'm going to get rid of you. But I just think it would, for one time, be nice for Lori to be served with divorce papers and not be able to run away for a bunch of days like she did with Charles.
All right, guys, I don't want to overstep my boundaries here with the time. I know that Gigi has to go, and I'm getting nervous with my little kiddos. So
is it quiet?
It's very, very
quiet.
Yeah,
too quiet.
I just got nervous. I could hear the yelling the whole time, and hopefully you guys couldn't hear that. But now that I can't hear anything,
you better go start your own investigation.
The last time it got quiet here, my daughter shaved her left eyebrow.
Oh my God.
Okay. It's time to go.
Yeah. Exactly. But thank you to both of you guys for being here. I really do appreciate it. And you guys are obviously the OGs on this case. Shout out to Nate as well. Who's obviously not on our panel, but he also knows this case very well. He lives in the community. He knows all things. So shout out to him, because he did a phenomenal job covering this. But you
and
too.
Justin Lum, got to throw Justin Lum in there. He's taking over the duties in Phoenix for us with Lori's impending trial, which is supposed to be August. I don't think it'll happen then, but
Justin Lum, ever since the
day Charles was shot,
June 2019.
Yep.
Yeah. Justin Lum too.
I swear, you know, the one thing I can watch over and over and it just cracks me up is Nate Eaton on the ground after she was extradited. And he's like, "Welcome back, Lori." I just love Nate. He's so low key sarcastic and it just cracks me up. So every now and then I'll go where he's like, "Welcome back, Lori." I love Nate. He's such a good guy.
He's very good. Another quick thing, just want to pull this up here and remind everyone that this is really all about justice for JJ, for Tylee, and for Tammy. So thank you to all of you guys. I also want to remind you guys that when you guys leave very nice, thoughtful, meaningful comments on any of our channels, family members and friends do go and watch. They do go and read, and it means a lot. And just on behalf of all of the family and friends and anyone who is affected, thank you guys, not just for this case, but for many cases. I know we also covered Rachel Morin over the weekend with family members on our channel. And family can read all of the comments. And so when you guys leave those comments, it really does make them feel like they have that support that so much of you guys are sending. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. And one more note, it is June 17th, which means we are, I believe, exactly 3 months away from Donna Adelson's trial. I want to let you guys know, if you have not subscribed to this channel that I'm on right now, it is the STS Surviving the Survivor Trials channel. You should be. We are already planning our programming. We will be pivoting and ramping up. We have a lot planned. We also have a very special show planned for Dan Markel's 10th anniversary that will involve a lot of best guests. So please stay tuned. And again, thank you guys for being so warm, so welcoming, and so supportive of all of the victims and all of their family members as well. It really does show. And all of the comments that I wasn't able to pull up here, I apologize. I'm still figuring out. I actually bought a mouse. I'm trying to figure out how to do the comments and speak at the same time, but I love listening to Gigi and Lauren, so I didn't want to take away from listening to pull the comments up. So apologies. But thank you, Gigi, and thank you, Lauren. Do you guys have anything else you want to say or share?
No, thank you. Thank you for this. Give us an eyebrow update later.
Oh, I definitely will. Trust me.
Yeah, and just thanks to everybody for loving these families. They felt it, they read the comments like you say, and just even just sending a thought of good wishes their way. They are very grateful, and they're just good people. I think Lauren can back me up 100% on this. These families are very unique, and I've covered some big trials in the past, but man, I've never wanted to be a part of so many families, even with everything going on as these, because the people in those families are so loving and accepting and open arms. So yeah, I just hope they find some peace now that Idaho is settled. We still got Arizona.
Yes. Still have Arizona.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. And remember, this is 3 different channels. This is a Surviving the Survivor channel. It's our trials channel. So please remember to subscribe and to like. We have Gigi from Pretty Lies and Alibis. So please go to her channel, subscribe and like. And then we have Lauren from Hidden True Crime. So go to her channel and like and subscribe. We appreciate all of you guys. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
We'll see you. Bye-bye.